Welcome to the most recent episode of the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke from SimBoxx. Delighted as always to be joined by Josh from JTH Boxing. It's been a couple of quiet weeks, and we're back with a huge heavyweight rematch. Joe Joyce, the juggernaut, he was stopped last time out in dramatic fashion by Zhilei Zhang. He goes right in with the immediate rematch, so hats off to him for that. We've got plenty of boxing to look back on with myself and Josh. Like we say, we've been away for a couple of weeks. It's been a couple of quiet weeks along the boxing landscape, which is quite unusual given we've got so many different promoters in mainstream boxing, that is, with Sky and BT and DAZN. We've got some small horse stuff. Me and Josh will get onto that as we go along. But yeah, welcome to the podcast. If you're not already, subscribe to the SimBoxx YouTube channel. Give us a review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. And make sure, of course, you're checking out JTH Boxing on YouTube as well. There'll be a link in the description. Josh, that's the necessities out of the way. We're looking forward to a busy week of boxing, a great night of boxing on Saturday night. How's things, mate?
You know what? Everything's actually quite good at the moment. Obviously, while we've had quite a few, it's been a quiet couple of weeks on the UK side of boxing, hasn't it? Obviously, the US has had their decent fights. They had Lopez the other night. I can't remember the other guy fought. My head's gone. I've been up since like 5 o'clock this morning, so I'm a bit tired. But no, it's been good. Still had a fairly busy couple of weeks though with all the boxing content stuff. Obviously, had Fury and Garni, which was a bit mental. Had the box off at the weekend, which we'll get into because that's not had a lot of coverage, but I think I think me and you both agree with it. It's a great little thing they've got there. But we'll get into that later on. We're here today to talk about the big heavyweight rematch, Zhilei Zhang versus Joe Joyce. I cannot wait for it, to be honest. I don't think anyone can wait for it. I think it's had a bit of stick. You know, some people saying, "Oh, it doesn't need to be made." Rematch clauses are a thing for a reason to protect Joe Joyce and other fighters like that. I still think it's an intriguing rematch, and yeah, I can't wait for it.
Absolutely. I think the one criticism that I had of this rematch, of course, I understand the business side of things, and it's the same way Eubank Jr. got the rematch against Liam Smith, is the same way that Zhang has to rematch Joyce here. Joyce was the A side going in. He had the interim WBO heavyweight world title, and that in itself is where my I'm a bit disgruntled with this fight, is that there's an interim world title when we've got a heavyweight world champion in Usyk that's not injured, that is able to take on his mandatory challenges. So maybe this is me being too simplistic with the world of boxing. Why not after Dubois? Usyk could have lined up a fight with Zhang here, but obviously we've got the rematch clause that means Zhang, even though he holds that WBO interim world title, has to rematch Joyce rather than go in with a full world champion. So that's my only gripe in terms of a boxing fan. I love this rematch. I thought the first fight was dramatic. It was brutal. There was times in there when you kind of winced and you thought, how was Joyce taking this kind of punishment? He was ultimately stopped in 6 rounds, so that grotesquely damaged eye. And I think it was again dramatic in the fact that we built Joe Joyce up for so long. He'd fought like Daniel Dubois, Carlos Takam, Joseph Parker, Christian Hammer, Bryant Jennings. I'm probably missing out a few. And he garnered this nickname, the Juggernaut, and it was so aptly right that was his nickname because he blasted his way through, and anything that he faced in terms of adversity from these opponents seemed to bounce off him. Daniel Dubois is a devastating puncher, and he barely laid a glove on Joe Joyce in their British title fight. So for him to come up against Zhang, I wasn't a massive fan of it first time around. I thought it was a bit laboured, a bit of a gimme fight, and I was proven, devastatingly wrong because it turned into such an entertaining fight. But it was so surprising in the way that this chin of Joyce seemingly crumbled in front of our very eyes. He seemed so indestructible for so long. Zhang was terrific on the night. He done what he said he'd do, chat shit, get zanged, which I thought was a brilliant little tagline in the build up to the first fight. But looking back to April and that first loss for Joe Joyce, Josh, firstly, was you as surprised as I was in the way that come about, that the idea that Joe Joyce could be hurt?
Do you know what? The reason why this rematch is so exciting to me is because of it's more not necessarily the way the fight went, but it's just the shock of it because it's like no one had a Zhilei Zhang win on the cards, let alone a stoppage, let alone a stoppage inside the first half of the fight. And that's the thing that's really exciting to me about it is the fact that nobody expected it to happen in the first fight. You know, we all went into that first fight thinking, oh yeah, it's just well, it's another one of those fights to keep Joyce busy. Obviously, he had that good fight against Parker, headlined a pay-per-view, won the fight convincingly, gave him a little come down fight before he goes into push for world titles. And Zhang's just come in and flipped the script, especially after when you look at the form Zhang was on, obviously he coming off a very controversial loss to Hrgovic. Um Obviously I know he's got that draw on his record with Jerry Forrest. Is that his name? I think Jerry Forrest. Either way, when you look at that, you I saw it on Twitter today and someone was like on the Ring Magazine rankings because of that draw. But when you look at his last two fights now, he should be above. Like someone said, he shouldn't be above Hrgovic because he lost to Hrgovic. But did he really lose to Hrgovic? No, and that's what I think adds into this fight as well. I feel like Zhang was just he was just slept on last time. No one expected him to do anything. You know, he's sort of 39 years old. No one expected anything. He came and he just flipped the script, and it wasn't even like he was doing anything special. He was just pinging Joyce with the jab. And it's like literally a jab has just completely crumbled him. And it was like when you say an eye for an eye, so that's what the build up is for this. But when you look at eye for an eye, how did Joyce beat Dubois? Took his eye off. That was Dubois' first professional defeat. Joyce's first professional defeat. His eye's been took off in half the time. And I said I don't want to get like go into my prediction now, but all I'm saying is how much can actually change in 5 months. You know, Joyce goes into every fight with the same style. It's that relentless pressure that increases the longer the fight goes. The more tired one fighter gets, the more energetic Joyce becomes. I don't see Joyce changing his style. A lot of people are saying head movement. When you look at the type of build Joe Joyce is, do you really think he's going to be moving his head that much? He might. Excited for because while in my head, I can't see anything changing from the first fight. But in my heart, I feel like something's going to change. And I feel like we could be in for either an all-time heavyweight classic or just a complete repeat of what we saw in the first fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, something interesting to pick up on what you said there is the injury that I say injury. It wasn't caused by any kind of accident. It was caused by the brilliance and the application of Zhilei Zhang that caused that damage to the eye of Joe Joyce. And I think that goes to show that sometimes you don't have to knock somebody out to stop them. If you formulate a game plan or if you identify an area of weakness in an opponent and you focus on that and you formulate your game plan around that whether it be the eye. We've seen a few years back with Canelo when he took out the bicep of Callum Smith. He aimed all these shots at the shoulders and the biceps of Callum Smith that then brought his guard down and he was able to unload heavy shots at the upper part of Callum Smith's body with his head and whatnot. Dubois, perfect example again. Joyce completely exploited that scenario to his advantage. Canelo again with Billy Joe Saunders. Maybe that was one shot that caused that damage to Billy Joe Saunders' orbital bone, but it was again an area of weakness that was exploited. So full respect to Zhang for playing out that game plan. Something we was going to touch on with Eubank and Smith. Maybe it's time we give these underdog victors their flowers rather than looking at what went wrong necessarily for Joyce, which is we're going to do because he's the favourite in the fight. But at the same time, let's pay our respects to the guy that got it right on the night. It wasn't no freak one-punch knockout. It was a sustained beatdown by the man that was better on the night in Zhang. With Joyce, I think it's going to be interesting leading into this rematch because at his age, he turned over professional late. We had that extensive amateur background and the World Series of Boxing background as well. But he turned over into the pro ranks very late. He was moved incredibly fast. And he is aging. You get away with it a little bit more in the heavyweight division, of course, but in his late 30s. And he really was dining out. We as boxing fans, boxing pundits, boxing media, were dining out on this idea that he couldn't be hurt. And we all started coming out with freakish Frankenstein comparisons that we wanted to see the chin of Joe Joyce against maybe the power of Deontay Wilder, the immovable force, the immovable object against the irresistible force. And we started throwing out all these crazy ideas. We all bought into the idea that he couldn't be hurt and that he couldn't be stopped. And, although he wasn't dropped against Zhang, maybe, taking a knee at some point there could have alleviated some of the pressure, especially in that second round when he really did come under a sustained attack. At this late stage of his career, I think it's going to be interesting to see. Normally we say about teaching an old dog new tricks in terms of their game plan, in terms of what they can physically do, but what about mentally for Joe Joyce heading into this rematch? That what he's built a career on so far, that what got him within touching distance of a world title fight, was that he just had to bludgeon his way to victory. That's gone now, and you could see it in the back end of the fight in rounds 5 and 6 that he was almost hesitant to sustain an attack and that he was wary of what's coming back. We'd not seen that before. So now that he's had 5 months to digest that and to take it in, he might be saying to himself in these sparring sessions and in training that I'm okay, I know what I'm doing, I've been there, I've tasted it, I can come back from it. But it's only when he's under those bright lights on Saturday night that we're really going to find out those answers. And if it goes wrong again, we've seen with Kell Brook, different weight, different scenario, of course, but he was injured once against Golovkin. In the very next fight against Errol Spence, it was the other eye that went. So I think that's going to be a pivotal. Again, we're not going to get into our predictions just yet, but that's going to be a pivotal point of this fight, whether it's won and lost, is how Joe Joyce is physically. He's going to have to redo the game plan, but also mentally. And we're not going to know the answer to both, obviously, until fight night.
That's the thing. That's what's so exciting about it is we don't know what to expect because obviously a lot of times you see the rematch. Like when we look at Eubank Smith, we saw the rematch because of not a one-punch knockout, but a very unexpected knockout. But you're spot on saying there was no knockout in this one. It was just a brilliant game plan from Zhang. He kept his composure. All he needed was a jab. He needed a jab, literally just straight punches because Joyce had no answer to that. And I think while he's not been dropped yet, that chin's been tested now, and it's shown that there is vulnerabilities in that chin. He can't just rely on that chin. And for me, I don't want to say this because when you look at a fight and you say, "Oh yeah, this is what his 17th pro fight," I think if Joyce loses this weekend, I really wouldn't be surprised if he never touches a world title if he loses this weekend. Because the road back after this, if he loses again on Saturday, is going to be a very long road back, in my opinion. Because he's
Absolutely,
7 years old.
Not to cut you off there, buddy, but if you think of Joe Joyce at his age, he's not going to really want to go back to the bottom rung of the ladder and rebuild. Maybe he will, maybe he'll fight into his early 40s, who knows? But then at the other end of the scale, if you're a Usyk or a Tyson Fury, the two guys that have got the belts at the minute, or if Anthony Joshua gets himself back into world title contention, or Jared Anderson comes along and wins a world title, are you really going to look at Joe Joyce and be like, I'll take him as a voluntary? Absolutely not, because okay, he's lost to Zhang and he might lose to Zhang again, but he's still a very, very, very tough night's work for somebody that's not got the physical stature of a Zhang. There's not going to be a lot of men that can do that to Joe Joyce. So I very much agree with you there that there's not going to be many routes back to the world title contention for Joyce at this stage of his career.
Even then, I was talking to Shane Watson about it in one of the interviews that I did with him at the Fury and Ngannou event. And we were talking about where did he go next if he comes out with a victory. And when you look at where's to go next, if you want to have him fight again this year or early next year, there's not a lot out there for him again as well. He's kind of, if he wins on Saturday, he's kind of got to sit out and just wait for a world title shot now, really, because is he going to want to risk a defense of his interim belt against Anthony Joshua? Probably not. He's got that Wilder fight lined up or whatever. Dubois, he's just lost. He's not going to want to take the Joyce fight. I think they're going to try and take Dubois back and rebuild him properly now. You got Joseph Parker, but he's already beat Joseph Parker. Martin Bacoli, but who knows what's going on with Martin Bacoli? I don't really know. He's one of those fighters, Martin, and it's completely off topic, but he's one of those fighters I feel like everyone's heard of, but never actually seen properly fight. No disrespect to him, I'm sure he's a great fighter if he's getting mentioned with all these names.
Don't let Billy Nelson hear you talk like this. Billy won't be happy.
I'm not saying he's a bad fighter. I'm just saying I'm not really seeing him fight that often. No, but then who else is there? You got what?
If rumours are to be believed, again, we're going off on a tangent, which we love to do. But Mike Bacoli against Carlos Takam is the fight that's very close to being signed, which I think is a great fight for Bacoli.
I mean, fair enough. If we can just see him fight again, I won't complain. I won't complain at all. But no, I'm trying to think what other heavyweights are there actually out there for Joyce to fight if he wins? Because he won't go for a third fight with Zhang, because it'll be like no. Because obviously in his head he might want to fight, but you got to look boxing's a business at the end of the day. You've got to look at what's going to make you the most amount of money, and not what's best for your career. Taking a third fight with Zhang is the last thing he's going to want to do, especially after that first fight. So where does the winner actually go from this? That's what I want to know. Where does the winner go?
I think that's an interesting question as well, especially considering, I don't know the business side of it too well, but I don't have Joe Joyce down as a massive ticket seller. He's not a massively sellable commodity. To see the way, say, Tyson Fury's gone into the events world, that he's got this freak show event, with all due respect, with Francis Ngannou. I don't know if Joyce is a sellable commodity like that, if he'll go down that kind of route. You just, went through the list of contenders there. There's maybe an undercard fight somewhere. Could he fight someone like a Frank Sanchez? Does he then become the B side? But that goes back to what we were saying before: is he going to take the time and the patience to rebuild? Should he lose, or like you say, even if he wins? I thought for a long time the Dubois rematch was always going to be there, but given that Dubois was, in my opinion, rushed into that WBA mandatory position, ultimately come unstuck against Usyk, that's kind of put their careers on different trajectories now. That it wouldn't make sense for either man to take that fight. So even in victory, like you say, it's difficult for us to predict where Joe Joyce goes, because maybe they'll keep him active. Maybe they'll show him on an undercard somewhere. I think a Dillian White fight would have always sold, but we don't know where Dillian White's up to these days, and what kind of ramifications his failed drug test is going to have. Because I think that was a fight that would always sell. We're not going to want to see Joyce against Chisora at this point. Again, that's another fight that was rumored a few years back, but that's not a good fight for Derek Chisora at this point. So yeah, I'd be intrigued. For any of our viewers, our listeners, hit us up on social media or in the comment section. Let us know your thoughts, because I think that's a really interesting point made by Josh there. In terms of Zhang, Josh, just to move it forward a little bit, we're saying about Joe Joyce and what he might have to do different, or will definitely have to do different. He lost the first time around, of course. But Zhang, he seemed like a quietly confident guy. He's quite a unique character. But coming into this fight now, he's got his career best win. He knows he can hurt the seemingly unhurtable. He can break the seemingly unbreakable. His confidence is going to go through the roof. He's a big man anyway. He knows he carries power. It makes him even more dangerous, doesn't it? That now he's, beforehand he believed he could do something. This time he knows he can do it. He goes in there a much more dangerous operator, surely.
Going into this one, I think Zhang's confidence is going to be sky high. I think, especially after the way of the first fight, like you say, he broke the unbreakable. He damaged the man who seemingly could never, like, he could get touched definitely, but he couldn't lose. Before that first fight in April, everyone looked at Joe Joyce and thought he might be the one to be able to pull off the unthinkable and beat the two giants at the top in Usyk and Fury. And I don't want to say he's being disrespected going into this, but like no one's going to be thinking that anymore. And like people really, Joyce could possibly just be getting looked at now, just like every other heavyweight when comparing him to Fury and Usyk. No, if we're here to talk about Zhang. I think all it needs to be done differently. Maybe pace himself a little bit better. I mean, nothing went wrong the first fight. He won the fight. He won the fight fair and square. He dominated. But he was slowing down towards those middle rounds. But ultimately, he did enough damage in those first few. Also, if we're going to talk about how the fight's going to play out, we already know that first round's going to be a massive feel in that round. Even though they already know each other quite well after the first fight, we don't know if Joyce is going to change. Personally, like I've already said, I don't think Joyce is going to change an awful lot. I don't think 5 months is enough time. But then again, we said the same thing about Chris Eubank, and look what he's just done to Liam Smith. Looked a totally different fighter. So yeah, I don't know what to expect. Um, I can't reiterate how good of a fight this is. It's the first time we've got a rematch where I think the excitement is coming from the unknown possibility. It's like a lot of people saying we can't see anything but the same result. But for me, I don't know why, but I've got a feeling in my heart that Joyce might somehow switch up what he's doing. I don't know how he's going to switch, because at the end of the day, for me, he didn't stand out particularly as a boxer, but it was that toughness, that cardio, that engine that just never seemed to run out. that made him so good because he was just that relentless force. You could take anything. You know, we saw the shots that he took against, Dubois. Dubois was flattening everyone before fighting Joyce. He hit Joyce with his cleaner shots. Joyce wasn't phased. He wasn't phased at all. Christian Hamer. I remember there was that clip of him landing a sweet overhand on Joyce's chin. Nothing. Literally. He just moved on, yeah. Like nothing happened. Imagine if that shot landed on anyone else. I'm not even going to try and say it and just be funny and say if that hit me or you. Because if that hit me or you, we would have gone to sleep straight away. But if that overhand hit, let's say a Dillian White or something like that, that's putting him to sleep, and that would be a big upset. Joe Joyce never seemed to get phased by these shots, and I know one of the big talking points. This kind of moves into a new point. I don't know if this is a point that we had wrote down, but the weight was a really big talking point heading into that last one. Um, I'm going to keep referencing the Shane Watson interview here because he did give me an awful lot, to be fair, going into this fight. But he says everything's better. The weight's much better this time. He said the camp's been much better. Um, but what if Joyce comes in at that same weight he came in at last time? Like he said himself in the ring afterwards, he felt weak in the ring that night. And they said the weight wasn't planned. So if you hadn't targeted coming that way, what I want to know is what's gone wrong in that camp? Because surely you'd be doing the exact same thing you've done every other camp. Why has it gone wrong now? And you can see how like people would say, oh yeah, heavyweight's not really affected by weight. It's just they get to weigh in at their walk around weight, but it's not like that. They've got like an optimal fighting weight where they perform at their best at a certain weight. And Joyce clearly has that. We hadn't really had that question of his weight before, but we've had that question now, and it's clear that he has a weight that he's much better at than a different one. And maybe that's why the chin was a little bit bad. Maybe he came in too light, and if for some reason he's cut weight, which I'm sure he probably didn't, it is probably a bit of a silly point. But if did the weight affect his chin maybe? Because we've never seen Joyce rocks until the last one. That's the first time we've seen Joyce properly hurt. He stumbled backwards, and he saw when he went forward, and the ref stepped in. And the ref shouldn't have stepped in that little moment there as well when Joyce was went into the corner face first. Don't know why the ref stepped in, but again, like many things with referees, we're never going to understand what's going through their head, but we just let them get on with it, don't we? But no, I think this fight, I feel like Zhang might. Oh, I don't know. I feel like Zhang might do the same thing. I feel like we could really see a similar fight, but I hope not. I don't know.
Josh is conflicting with his emotions at the minute. I think, just to touch on the issue of the weight there, I think it's one of those things that when a defeat that's so shocking happens, the weight does, similar to, we keep going back to it because it's the most recent high-profile rematch, but Smith and Eubank Jr., as soon as he lost, the inquest goes again into what went wrong with the guy that was considered the favourite going in, certainly with the bookies. In Eubank's case, it was the fact that he made the 157 or 158 for the Conor Benn fight that never materialized. This time with Joyce, he come in 15 pounds lighter for Zhang than he did against Joe Parker. But then maybe is that because against Joe Parker, he decided to be the bigger man and he was going to bully the smaller man in Joe Parker, whereas with Zhang's as big as him, so maybe he thought, I'll come in a bit lighter here and try and be a bit more mobile. Or is it just one of those things that, as we say, heavyweights don't make weight, that he just kind of didn't really target a weight per se, and the fact that now it went wrong, we look back at it and say, oh, that's where it went wrong. Whereas if he'd got it right on the night, that if it did come to fruition that he got the victory, that we wouldn't have looked back at the weight as any kind of factor. I think, in terms of his punch resistance, if being 15 pounds lighter was the reason why he was taking such punishment from Zhang, I think he could have been another 10 stone heavier. Those punches were really, really heavy punches. Zhang's got that kind of power where I think the weight didn't play a part in the damage that he took, certainly, but it might have played a part in his ability to move around the ring. Maybe maybe we're plucking at feathers here. But Josh, we'll move it forward. We've kind of alluded to it between us, more so yourself than me. But our big fight predictions, I think I'm on a bit of a roll at the minute. We Eubank Jr. prediction, right? I'm sure. Although I think it's a point, not stoppage. But anyway, Josh, our Joe Joyce, Zhilei Zhang predictions. We can't sit on the fence here on the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. We don't like splinters. And as always, I'll pass the mic to you first. Josh, give us your prediction for the big heavyweight fight. You can't sit on the fence.
I was hoping you were going to go first, so I could just like finally settle down on a prediction. Right. All right. Let's just do a quick little breakdown then. So let's look at the first fight. It could easily go the same way because with heavyweights you don't see a lot change. You can't really heavyweights can't necessarily change their style massively. Like maybe you other weight classes, yeah, you can change your style and you'll see something new. But with heavyweights, I don't really think you can change the style. Like what works for you, won't work for someone else at heavyweight. But could I just don't see how Joyce can change it up because it's not like I know I've already said it, but it's not like he was known for his amazing boxing ability. He was known for his toughness, his relentlessness, his like I said, the engine that just never seems to run out. Oh, hmm, hmm, hmm. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say one thing now. It's gonna finish inside the distance. I can't see this fight going points, in my opinion. But at the same time, I don't see anyone going to sleep. I don't see anyone getting knocked out to the point of fuck it, you're out cold. Have a nice little nap in the ring. But I don't know. Do you know what? Now that I've just done that breakdown, my head's completely gone. I just don't see. I don't see Zhang winning now. Hmm. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna lock in Joe Joyce. No, I'm not. I don't know. Right, can I just quickly pass the ball back to you so I can rethink this in my head? Because I'm sure you've probably got a confident prediction in your head.
Absolutely, and I'll be interested to see if my thoughts have any impact on your prediction, Josh. I strongly believe this time around that it's a Joe Joyce victory. I think he's under pressure like he's not been in his career before. There were signs in that fight that although he took incredible damage to the eye, that he was coming back into the fight. We know Joyce has got this incredible engine, that he's got an incredible output of punches. I think if he stays clear of taking that kind of damage again, which is easier said than done, but I think if he starts at a slower pace and he kind of feels his way into the fight, but Zhang's dangerous in those early rounds, so that's going to be a battle in of itself. Winning those first, second, third round, that's almost like a mini battle within the war. But I think if he navigates those early rounds, he's always going to throw a lot of punches. And I think Zhang is another 5 months older. He's notorious for slowing down in the second half of fights, whereas Joe Joyce comes on uber strong. So I think as long as Joyce is in a fighting condition heading into the fifth, sixth, seventh round, which he wasn't last time, then I think Joe Joyce will be the juggernaut that we all know. He'll put his foot to the pedal to the metal, and he will force a stoppage of Zhilei Zhang. And with you, I think you could put your house on the fight not going the distance. It really won't. This ends within the scheduled 12 rounds. And for me, it's a Joe Joyce victory. He stops Zhang on his feet. I think either the towel comes in or the referee stops this. But Joe Joyce, for me, stops Zhilei Zhang in between rounds 7 and 9.
Now that you said that, you have given me a bit more confidence because I was thinking, right, I'm gonna give my not just prediction for the result. I'm gonna give my whole fight, how the fight plays out. I'm gonna give you a whole rundown how the fight's gonna go in my opinion. I think the first couple of rounds, Joyce is going to come out and just be defensive and just avoid damage more rather than win the rounds. He's going to look to survive the rounds, which is kind of what he always does a little bit. But he'll throw punches. I don't think he'll throw a lot in these first couple of rounds. I think we'll see Zhang put him under a bit of pressure again, but I don't think it'll be as bad as the first time. I think we'll hit the fourth, fifth. Joyce will start moving in a little bit more. Zhang will start to tire out a little bit more. And I think we'll move on later on. Zhang fades a lot. Joyce comes on a lot. I'm not going to go as early as June 7 to 9. I'm going to say between 10 and 12. No, not 10 and 9 and 12. I'm going to go between 9 and 12. Um, I like the confidence and you can put your house on it because if this goes points now, I will be checking Zoopla to see your house on there. But yeah, I'm going to lock in Joe Joyce between 9 and 12, and that's my final prediction. I'm not going to think about it until fight night now. That's a lie. I'm going to be sat in college on Wednesday thinking about it, but I'm locking it in now. Joe Joyce between 9 and 12.
Guys, that's our predictions. As always, we invite you to let us know your thoughts, your predictions. Is it repeat? Is it revenge? It's eye for an eye. Fire off in the comments below. Fire off on our social media channels. A lot of pundits are going for repeat. We don't see it that way. I think for the first time in a little while, me and Josh are in unison with our predictions. But yeah, let us know in those comments below how you see it going. So, Josh, in terms of Saturday night, obviously all eyes are on the main event, Joe Sang. But the undercard, it's a typical Frank Warren Queensbury undercard. It's stacked full of their prospects, their up and comers, their established names looking to get back into contention with Zach Parker and Anthony Yard bouncing back from defeats. Anything in particular catch your eye?
Um, there's three things on the undercard that really catch my no. There's more. The whole undercard catches my eye. To be fair, I like the fact they've got Tommy Fletcher and Alice Jr. on there because obviously those two have had a few back and forth. It's clearly a fight Queensbury are going to look to make a little bit further down the line when they can both compete for titles. Ezra Taylor, my local boy, trains 10 minutes away from me. He's in a big step up against Joel McIntyre, and Joel McIntyre is quite a big step up from Ezra's last opponent, Khalid Gradia, who's fighting Zach Parker. That's what I find quite interesting. The guy who Ezra Taylor's just beat is now fighting Zach Parker. It's just a little interesting thing I find. So I'm very excited to see Ezra step up. Always love seeing local talent come through, especially Nottingham. It's not known for its boxing. There's not a lot of boxing that happens in Nottingham. You've got what Lee Wood, Echo Esserman, Derek Osaze when he decides to fight. I don't know what's going on with him. Hope he fights soon. But Ezra, I think Ezra's probably one of the next best things to come out of Nottingham. I've got a lot of hope in him. I think his style's eye-catching. I think he's got that. He's got everything. He's got that power, but he's got that boxing IQ as well. He's a very established amateur. Actually made his debut about 5 minutes away from my house at a leisure centre. So what's there not for me to like about him? He's just doing it for the local boys. Zach Parker, I'm glad to see him back, but I'm very underwhelmed by the opponent, if I'm being honest. Extremely underwhelmed, especially for a 10 rounder. Like you were thinking, obviously, I know there was talks of a Lerone Richards, but no one wants to fight Lerone Richards because it's high risk, low reward fighting Lerone, and that's no disrespect to Lerone, but it's how it is. He's such a dangerous fighter in the fact that he'll box your brains off for 12 rounds, and he's a handful for anyone on any night. So yeah, I can understand why they haven't taken that, but I'm just really let down by the fact he's gone for a fully fledged journeyman who's coming off a defeat to a prospect like Ezra. Obviously, I know Khalid has also fought Dan Aziz earlier this year when Dan Aziz was on holiday in Milan and just decided to say, fuck it, I want a quick boxing match. Somehow I got in touch with some random Italian promoter, and next thing you know, he's doing a cheeky 8 rounder. Instead of going to the beach on the Saturday, did a cheeky 8 rounder. Wish we could all make a decision like that, but some of us don't get that choice. Anthony Yard's comeback attracts me. I don't know what's going on with the opponent situation though. It was said to be Ricky Summers,
Yeah.
who's coming off. Who's Anthony Yard facing then? That's what I want to know.
Is that well-respected opponent that's seen on the majority of cards? Unfortunately, the Mr. TBA. He's the man in the running for the fight at the minute.
Oh, dearie me. I mean, if we're going to credit our incredible sources, in my words, the Fabrizio Romano of boxing, international boxing news, they've said they should have some news for us either today or tomorrow. Obviously, I'm not going to get my hopes up and expect anyone major. It's simply too late. I was fascinated to an extent by the Ricky Summers fight, simply by the fact that Ricky was coming off an English title win earlier this year. And then out of the blues got the Anthony Yard fight. I'm sure he's not pulled out of that fight for any reason I'm sure there's going to be some sort of injury because I don't think he'd pull out of a fight like that. So whatever's gone on in the background, I just hope he's happy, healthy, and safe. Royston Barney Smith's back out. He's quite a good prospect. He's done quite well. So you got to get those three big first round knockouts back to back to back. Last fought at York Hall on the David Adelaide card and went the distance. Wasn't too happy with himself after the fight. I interviewed him after the fight, but he was still very solid. Sean Noakes and Pierce O'Leary, two very big hitters. I know I said I was in point. I think I should get a job as a promoter, because I sell these cards fantastically, in my opinion. Listen, I might have a word with Dev Sarni on Thursday and say to him, listen, if you need a bit of help, he's got me on Twitter. He knows what to do. He knows I'm here. But no, it is like a lot of people have given this card a bit of sticks and it's a bit of a shit undercard. But when you actually look at the fighters individually and the styles that are on the undercard, I think it's an undercard of a lot of heavy hitters and a lot of, we could actually, while a lot of the fights are set for 10 rounds, 8 rounds, 12 rounds, I don't think a lot of them are going to go the distance, to be honest. I think the only ones that will go the distance, Zach Parker, I think he's don't even put your house on it. Put your most valuable thing you own on it, and you'll still have it afterwards, and you'll have a little bit more probably. Not much more. You'll probably make 20p if you stick a grand on that fight to go the distance. But it's going to go the distance. But every other fight, I feel like it could end really quickly. Ezra Taylor, I think, will go the distance. But I feel like Ezra's going to be entertaining in that way though. Ezra's always been quite a slick boxer, and he's shown he's got power. Not as well. Joel McIntyre's fucking tough as nails, so I don't see him going to sleep anytime soon. I think I've just promoted the whole undercard, so I'm going to throw the ball back over to you and just let you add any comments to my absolute tangent that I've just been on.
Yeah, so in terms of that, what a salesman Josh Hart is. Dev Sani, eat your heart out. I'm a little less enthusiastic, to be honest, Josh. I think in terms of the names, seeing Pace O'Leary in against Ken Gardner. Ken Gardner had a great win against Conor Walker, and we've seen what Conor Walker's gone on to do in beating Cyrus Patterson. So I think that's interesting for Pace O'Leary. Great, exciting talent. Moses Atama stands out. But for me, I just think that, aside from Leary Gardner, that you make Pace O'Leary a favourite in that fight. There's no real 50-50 contest. You look back at the first fight, and you had Denzel Bentley defending his British title against Kieran Smith. Michaela Mayer made an appearance on that card as well. She was due to fight Linada too. That fight fell apart, but she was due to defend the world titles there. Or not a world title, sorry, but she was due to fight Linada too. They're both former world champions. And I just think this fight is lacking that mid-level co-main, if you like, or chief support. Somebody like someone very well in Echo Atuman. I think he could have got a fight on here. And there's talk of him being on fringe world title level now, but I think this would have been ideal. Maybe getting Anti-Yard in a slightly more competitive fight than not having an opponent announced 4 days before fight night. I think that's one of the worries with Anti-Yard, just to pick up on that, is that he, aside from Lyndon Arthur, he has these world title fights against Sergei Kovalev built up on a record of, less than desirable opposition, shall we say. And Frank's great at manoeuvring his fighters up the WBO mandatory route. Fights Sergey Kovalev, falls short at the top level, comes back down, loses to Lyndon Arthur, beats Lyndon Arthur, then jumps back into world title contention against the general consensus number one in the division. Beterbiev loses in a valiant effort, but he loses, and now he's come back down. He was going to fight Ricky Summers, which I thought was a mismatch. If Yard's going to be at the level we think he is, and the 175-pound division is so exciting. We could have seen him in with maybe a Spider Richards or something like that. We know we want the fights with Boats, and we want the fights with Dan Aziz, maybe a trilogy fight with Lyndon Arthur. But I'd always want a little bit more from Anti-Yard in those middle fights, if that makes sense. Maybe like a European title level, or fringe world contender. But I think he yo-yos between the levels of opponents too much, and no doubt he'll go out there on Saturday and put on a destructive performance and stop his opponent. But he really needs to, similar to what they're going to try and do with Daniel Dubois, I guess, build him up properly. Other than that, the Noakes brothers, I think that's a nice little touch that they're going to fight on the same card for the first time in about 10 years. So it'll be the first time as pros, both brothers fighting on the same card. So in terms of the names, I'm excited to see some of these prospects box, but in my opinion,
it lacks that real excitement.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to touch on, we said Joyce isn't a massive ticket seller. So I actually went and looked at tickets earlier for my mum. I'm not going to get into my mum's coming, but my mum was in talks of possibly coming to the fight as well. And there's actually not a lot of tickets left, There's like tiered seating. We're running really short of tickets. I don't want to stick out any fingers and say they fucking shipped a load out for free, which they may well have done. But if ticket sales are what they are on there, I think they've done quite well. Does it make you think Joyce could be a bit more of a ticket seller? I don't know. I don't want to delve into that too much. I do feel like should possibly try and slide away from this weekend now. We have done a lot of talking about it. But tickets have looked to have gone quite well. Touching on the Echo Westman point of getting Echo on the card, I don't want to point any fingers and try and stir anything up. But I was doing a little puzzle in my head of thinking of boxers that were at the red carpet for the Fury and Garner event. So yeah, Joe Joyce, obviously he was there for this fight. This was the time. Queensbury star boy, the next best thing Queensbury have got. They're gonna want him there no matter what. And obviously he's fighting this weekend. Obviously Fabio Warley and David Adelaide, they're set to fight. Why was Echo Westman there? He was just there, but obviously the world title. Obviously they had the order to fight in the eliminator for the IBF, but that's seemingly not going ahead anymore after the purse bid was won for like 63 grand. I don't think we'll be seeing Echo push for the world title anymore, which pains me. It really does pain me. Because talking to Echo off camera, I'm not going to reveal everything that was actually no, because everything we said off camera got said on camera anyway. Basically, he has to fight Harry Scarf by January, apparently, but then at the same time, he's getting ordered to fight for a world title. How does this make sense? How is he being ordered two fights at once? I don't know. But you know, it seemingly his
Well, at
world
that point,
title.
he has to decide what route he wants to go down, doesn't he? Does he want to win the British title outright or defend it again? Or
He's already won it outright.
also,
He's won
he's
it
up
out.
there. So there we go. He's already
Yeah.
won it outright. So then, surely at this point, he vacates and moves on. Maybe.
Because me and where was I talking about it? I was talking about it with someone, and we made sure he'd won it outright. So he beat Chris Jenkins to win the belt. His first defense came against Danny Ball, and I remember the exact night because it was the same night as Fury versus Wilder 2. No, 3. Fury Wilder 3. It was on that Birmingham card they did. I cannot remember who headlined that night, but I remember Echo was on that card. Then he defended against Darren Tetley, I want to say, the following April. Or did he fight him in the meantime? No, I
Yeah,
don't think he did.
definitely fought Tetley because that was on the.
Fought Tetley on the Fury white card because he was meant to headline that at York Hall a week later and then got drafted in last minute. I would like to go into the story because I actually had a podcast for a college project with Echo Esserman, and he actually told me the whole fight week and like how mad it was for him. But unfortunately, the podcast doesn't actually exist anymore, which I'm actually heartbroken about because I'm not joking. Say I'm full of myself, or I actually sat down and listened to that podcast myself.
Brilliant. So just to touch on the Echo Suman, uh, beat Chris Jenkins for the British title, beat Danny Ball, stopped him. Points win against Darren Tetley, points win against Samuel Antwi, which is aged very well now, seeing that what Antwi's went and done at £154. And then, of course, Chris Congo on the Liam Smith, Chris Eubank Jr. one card. So we've not actually seen Essuman fight since that win back in January, which is 8-9 months ago now. So he's definitely due a run out. So we look forward to seeing Essuman back in the ring. But Josh, just swinging it
He
forward. Go on, I'll let you catch up there before we move on.
did say to me he'll be back before the end of the year because he's been told he was given a fight date for April, then another one in June, then July, then August, and now we just don't know what's going on. But he should. I'm not going to just hedge my bets on it and say he will fight at the end of the year, but he wants to fight by the end of the year. If you go watch my interview, cheeky little plug, he does say he's ready to punch anyone's head in. So yeah, but let's move on.
Absolutely. He's certainly a talent that deserves activity. But yeah, moving forward, we'll actually move backwards, Josh. This past Friday, you was in attendance in Telford. It was an interesting card, a very exciting concept. The box off, for those that haven't heard of it, Josh was ringside. He was there in a media capacity. 4 cities, 14 captains. Tom Skinner for London, Johnny Nelson for Yorkshire, Ricky Hatton for Manchester, and JK for Birmingham. 4 teams, 4 captains, all pitted against each other. Friday night was semi-final night, which leads into a final night, which is tentatively scheduled for November. Josh, we was talking throughout the night. I was at home watching it on the Boxing Social YouTube channel. You was there in person, and early doors certainly no one knew what to expect. No one knew what to expect of a night's boxing. It was a tournament concept. There was, of course, teething issues, but all in all, Josh, what a fantastic night of boxing. There was 50-50 scraps. I think in the tournament part of the night, there was 2 undercard fights, and everything else was geared towards the tournament. There was 4 3-minute rounds. It pitted journeyman against journeyman, prospects against former prospects. Great action, some great stoppages, some great performances. And Josh, I am fully 100% on board with this box off concept. I hope it really does take off. They'll learn from the Friday night. They'll get it right, and they'll be bigger and better moving forward. But Yeah, take it through us. I'll take us through it from your point of view of being in the arena, being around the likes of Ricky Hart and Johnny Nelson and whatnot, and being around these guys that were given the opportunity to box under the big lights and get the star, the big lights on them that they wouldn't usually get at this point of their careers.
I think that's the thing that was so interesting about it. So obviously, I don't want to be a knob, but it was Saturday night, not Friday night.
My mistake.
It's all no. Friday was the weigh-in and the press conference. This is what I really found interesting. They actually did the weigh-in first, then the press conference a couple hours later. Um, because I only found out Thursday evening at 9:30. I was going. I was at work. It had gone completely dead, so I had my phone next to me while standing next to the toaster at McDonald's in case any orders came through. I was like, I had an email about the deadlines for the Queensbury applications. And I was like, oh, all right, let me check my email. And I had some email from some bloke. It said the box off and we're pleased to invite you. And I was like, I'm sorry. Well, where this notification never came through. Like not one ping of my phone for this email. I checked it and I read it. I was sat there. I'm fairly sure I missed someone's order because I was reading the email. But I had an email. It was like, oh yeah, we're pleased to invite you to us to Friday for the press conference. I'm like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be there. Obviously, a list off the names that are going to be on there. And as soon as I saw Ricky Hatton, Johnny Nelson, Tom Skinner, I was like, yeah, I've got to go. So I went to college the next morning, pulled off the classic, got a doctor's appointment, got to go. I think I sold that idea a bit poorly when I put on my story that I was on a train station and I was nowhere near a doctor's. Um, Pulled up on the Friday. Only me, Boxing Social, and Boxing News were there. Obviously, just me hanging out with the big boys because I'm clearly one of them now. I wish, anyway. But no, the Friday was good. First of all, talking away from the actual boxing itself, I just want to say a big thank you to the people who were leading this event, all the backstage people for being so welcoming to me. And just like, they almost just took me in like one of their own that night, especially Tom Skinner. What a boy Tom Skinner is. Oh, honestly, he just took me under his wing for the week. He loved it. Follow me on Twitter. Honestly, me and Tom Skinner, we're just boys like that now. I'll be seeing him for a pint in November for the final. But no, everyone there was really helpful. I think it's kind of we're all learning at the same time because I'm still quite fresh in this media game. They're a very fresh new promotion. So I think I've got a lot of thankfulness towards them for letting me come, and I think they will show the same towards me for giving their event coverage. I don't think they needed much coverage from me though, because Boxing Social was already a great fucking brand to have behind you, isn't it? But moving towards the actual fight night, the only thing I will say is I think they're in this for the long run. I don't think they're going to pick up eyes from the casual fans straight away because it's not the way you sell fights is with names. You're not going to be able to sell fights purely based off the boxing. Sadly, in this new in this world that we're in, to pick up the public's attraction, you're going to need to get decent names. And I think I like the idea of team captains, but I don't really see because when they first announced this, the way I thought this was going to go is the team captains will be in the corner on fight night and be coaching them. But then you saw obviously like Pat Barrett, he was in the corner in the first fight for someone. Don't know where he went for the rest of the night because I was going to try to find him for an interview, but he just, I do not know where he went. But yeah, no, I think I like the idea of the team captains, but I'd like the team captains to be a bit more involved on the fight night itself. And this is me being disrespectful in the slightest to them. I do love the idea. I did actually say to the founder, Razi Hassan, in an interview, I said it off camera to him as well. I'm a massive fan of this. From boxing fans, I really wish this got more publicity earlier on because I saw it quite early on, but I don't think many other people did. Like you messaged me on what Friday night, saying like, "What's this all about?" And obviously, I can tell you're impressed by it. I'm sure on Twitter, I saw it got a lot of positivity on the way on either. It got a lot of positivity after the evening was done. Because it's really good for genuine boxing fans who will watch the sport no matter who's in the ring. It's fantastic because it's people who haven't been given an opportunity. The whole reason for this event and the fighters they chose was people with genuine talent who struggle with selling tickets. I found out every fighter this night was actually guaranteed a purse, which I think is quite good. I think that's really good. I like that idea. These are people who struggle with it, but it's talent as well. But not as well. For me, the thing that stands out for me was the journeyman category of having two journeymen face off with each other. And they couldn't have done it any better by picking Daryl Sharp, because Daryl Sharp has to be my favourite journeyman in the UK. Because I think he's just one mad bastard who can just take every punch you throw at him. I believe he's the one man apart from Joe Joyce who could probably firm a punch from Deontay Wilder. Just look at what he does to people. He just stands there. You could hit him with a bus and he just get up and be like, "Oh yeah, come on, do it again, come on." He's so good for these young fighters, and seeing him actually fight another journeyman. I know it was Ben Thomas who's fought before, but we saw that class from the journeyman there. You saw it with Daryl Tapfuma in his fight and the co-main event of the evening. What a great stoppage from him. Literally went out there and he had the opponent out on his feet. He had Jake Goodwin in the main event, gutted for him. But again, what a fight! That's what it's to like with this. There's no lengthy 10 rounders before the main event when you sat there half asleep just waiting for the main event to come out. That you never get that with these because one, you don't know what to expect, but two, it's people coming and giving it their all. Not one person went in there to survive that night. And that's the thing I like the most about it is the fact that everyone was coming to win. Everyone was coming to prove a point. I think the team captains behind it helped a bit with growing the event. I think obviously the box office and all the people there, they'll only learn from this. Which I think is great. I think the fact that it still did as well as it did on the night, in terms of the entertainment, I'm sure as it goes on as well. Like I saw Dave Allen tweeting about it. I saw Sonny Edwards tweeting about it. Sonny Edwards said he wants to get involved with the Sheffield team. Just think about those names who've already said they want to get involved. I really do think this has potential to go and be one of the best things. I think it gives me ultimate boxer type vibes when Boxer used to do that before they became an actual promotion. They were just doing the 3 fights in one night type thing. I know it's not exactly like that, but I still think it's great. You had Sheldon McDonald on there against Julian Wilson. Unfortunately, there's no men's cruiserweight finals. That was technically the cruiserweight final for the tournament. What a fight that was! That was the second fight of the night. I'm fairly good friends with Sheldon McDonald. Not gonna lie, did shit myself a little bit when he got dropped. I think I looked down at my phone to text you, looked back up, and I just see him through the ropes. I've put my hands on my head. I'm like, what's going on here? But he showed so much heart to pull through. And I said it to him after the fight because he spotted me after the fight. I was sat in this little sofa on the VIP area. Not gonna lie, half asleep because this was when there was that big delay because of a fight getting cancelled. But the fight got cancelled, then got put back on, then got off, then put back. I don't know. It was mad. Um, and he actually came over to me. We started chatting. He was like, I wasn't going to ask him for an interview originally because I'm going to his fight week on the same week as Lee Wood. He was like, "Oh, do you want to shoot something now?" So I shot a lovely little sit down interview with him. And, the way he just showed it's something different. You see these fighters who actually come to win. If that was any other fighter there against Julian Wilson that night that got put down by that, they probably would have just stayed down if that was any bog standard journeyman. But every single person that came in showed heart. They wanted to prove a point, and while it's not the biggest stage, arguably they were on a bigger platform than television. So I know with television, what's on. If you want to watch that channel, that's what you're watching. But YouTube's more accessible, in my opinion, than TV nowadays. You can get YouTube on literally anything. I'm not being funny. I bet if you got an Apple Watch, you could probably watch YouTube on that. You can watch YouTube on literally anything. So for them to get that chance on there on Boxing Social, and Boxing Social giving them that platform, I think this thing will only do well. All I'd like to see is the team captains be a little bit more involved. Maybe even get the team captain to fight. Someone like Tom Skinner and JK. They're obviously people who have been fans of boxing for a while. I'm not saying maybe face off against each other. If London and Birmingham were facing off in the final, I'd be all up for a JK versus Tom Skinner scrap. But I don't think we'll be getting that just this time. I think it's London versus Leeds in the final. So I've got a little clip from an interview with Johnny Nelson dropping tomorrow, hopefully. Tom Skinner actually invades the interview right at the end and just comes in and starts rubbing it in because John, obviously in a joking way, but Johnny was saying he went on for like 5 minutes, just like, oh, it's just this, it's that, because Yorkshire were in the lead the whole night, and then because of that main event, London took it last minute and actually won. But I think it was a great night, and I've waffled on about this again. The box off. If you want to hire me, you've got me. You know my socials. You know my number. If you want to hire me, I'm here. I'm up for work. Little money as well. I'll take whatever you offer me. Just please make me your promoter. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Josh. I don't really know how I can follow that there, but I absolutely share your enthusiasm. I think there was certain points of the night where we mentioned already there was teething issues. There was a bit of a mishmash of fights. That Sheldon McDonald fighting Julian Wilson. Julian Wilson had not fought for 5 years. He was an undefeated prospect. Stopped fighting 5 years ago. Comes straight back in against somebody of Sheldon McDonald's experience. I think he's only one loss on his record, and that was in the Boxer tournament. So yeah, it was just a great night of action. And just touching on Daryl Sharp, I've got a soft spot for Daryl myself. He's tough journeyman at 124, 125 fights he's had. It was only his eighth victory. He's been stopped. You know, you can count on one hand how many times he's been stopped. A really, real tough man. Um,
I know off my head
and
three times.
I know him in and out of the ring. Really, really good character. So it was good to see him get a victory. Ben Thomas is a warrior as well. Interesting with Daryl Sharp. You know, he's fought as an away fighter, middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, cruiserweight, and even at heavyweight last summer. Real warrior of a man. So yeah, hats off to Daryl for getting that victory. And he's also, you know, if he was interested, we were championing his toughness, his durability. Here, he's mentioned to me before that of all the boxers he's faced in these 124, 125 fights, the hardest puncher that he's fought is Liam Williams, which I think is quite an interesting fact.
I want to counter that. So when did he fight Liam? When did he tell you this information? When did he tell you this information?
I'd like to say within the last year.
Okay, so right, he fought in March at Harvey Haddon. My first ever show I covered as press for JTH Boxing. And he fought Derek Osaze in the main event. And apparently, now these were Derek's words and not Daryl's, so I can't take full word for it. But Daryl supposedly said that Derek was the hardest fighter he's ever fought in terms of punches, which I can somewhat understand because the zappiness of it, you know, the speed of it, I don't know. But apparently, Derek Osaze, a man who's 12-1 with two knockouts, is supposedly the hardest puncher Daryl Sharp has ever faced. Not my words, Derek Osaze's words.
Well, I'll let you pull that out with him because I'm not pulling up Daryl. Definitely not. Josh, we're going to get squeezed for time, so I know there's a few things we want to touch on. Of course, we missed out on Chris Eubank Jr. His epic victory. You know, people are going to come up with excuses for Liam Smith with the weight and the injuries. You can look into that as much as you want, but a great victory for Chris Eubank Jr. stopping Liam Smith, dropping him a couple of times en route to that victory. So hats off to Eubank. He was written off after that first fight stoppage loss, the first time he'd ever been dropped, first time he'd ever been stopped. He made right of that wrong and looks set now to fight Conor Benn. So, you know, two birds, one stone. I'll let you take it from here. But yeah, Chris Eubank, Conor Benn back on. And is a certain Mr. Conor Benn going to make an appearance on the Matchroom card out in Florida this weekend?
See, now originally I thought the question was going to be what did you make of the performance? I was going to go one word and say
Birds,
simply
one stone. Two birds,
dominant.
one stone.
So if we're going to talk about the performance of Liam Smith, not Liam Smith, Chris Eubank Jr., I'm just going to keep it simple. Pure fucking dominance. Can't really say anything about it. There's not a lot to say about it because everything that's been said, or I'd want to say, has probably already been said by everyone who's probably much more credible than me. So I'm just going to let them say it. In terms of Conor Benn this weekend, I personally, I don't see it happening. For some reason, it's just not adding up in my head. Especially when they talk about how they want this big comeback for Conor Benn, they want this big glorified celebration to welcome him back. And instead you're slapping him on last minute on a card that's at a venue of about 500 people. Not saying that's bad for Matchroom because Eddie Hearn has said like pretty publicly they are going for a different type of fight night this time around. It's more of a casino type layout, more of a chilled night layout. But I don't see him fighting this weekend. Especially when you think obviously you're gonna have to fly out to the States and adjust to the timings out there. You know, it's not like we share the same time zone as Florida. We just don't. Um, Personally, I don't see it happening. However, I'm not going to knock it off because you never know in this sport that we're in, the sport that we all know and love, boxing. Anything can happen at any given time. So if he was to get announced, like the reports are saying, I'm happy to see him back. At the end of the day, he's been proven innocent. No more argument on my end. He proved it. Yeah, he proved his innocence. He beat his case. Let him fight. As for the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, if I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together, I'm starting to feel like I start using the word puzzle a lot, but it's just how my mind works. Everything seems to end up being a bit of a puzzle to me, and I start adding little pieces together. Um, Matchroom have said so. Originally, I thought that Matchroom's last show of the year was going to be Sonny Edwards versus Bam Rodriguez in Arizona. But obviously, if you've seen interviews, Eddie Hearn said they could even possibly go as late as December 23rd. I'm all up for that because I love boxing around Christmas time. I think the atmosphere is just got that slight little bit like it's got that good little tingle when around Christmas time. I was going to go into a massive story about how I went to Parker Zora 2 before Christmas and I just loved it, but I'm not going to get into that because we've not got time. Um, I don't know if we'll see Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. this year, to be honest, because they said the December 23rd date could be a UK one and could be an AJ return. Um, God knows what's going on. They've also said it could fall December 2nd, December 9th. I'd like to see Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank before the end of the year. But if they want to go to a stadium, please wait till summer because I don't want to go to another stadium fight in December. It killed me last year at Fury Chisora. I don't want to go through that suffering and pain again. So if you're going to take it to a stadium, hold out till April, please. Thank you very much, Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, so guys, if you've not seen the news, again, it's social media rumors, but rumors tend to start somewhere. And of course, is the Zone card, the Matchroom card on the Zone this weekend, headlined by Richardson Hitchens against Jose Cepeda, Jesse McCaskill, and Sandy Ryan in a welterweight world title fight. Ammo Williams against Steve Rolls. So that's the card that they're looking on slide, or possibly looking to slide Conor Benn on for a somewhat subdued return to the ring before a bigger fight will promise later in the year, as Josh just said. But guys, that's a point we're going to wait to see if comes to fruition. Josh, did you want to add something to that bit?
I was just going to say, right, we're going to make this very quick. So it's not a debate, but a point that I've got. Where do they slot Conor Benn on the card? Do they slot him on later in the night for the people in the arena, or do they slot him earlier on in the nights to make the UK fans not have to wait as long for him? I don't know.
I think it'd be co-main. I think it'd go on right before the main event.
And then one last thing, up the Sandy Ryan. Do it for the East Midlands. Come on, Sandy Ryan. Bring it home.
Absolutely. And, before we finish, a quick 60-second mention. The Friday night before, Chris Eubank against Liam Smith 2, Lyndon Arthur, Manchester's Lyndon Arthur, he picked up the IBO light heavyweight world title. He finally got the fight with Brian Suarez. It was cancelled at the 11th hour when it was originally scheduled to happen back in March. He went in there. He overcome major adversity. He was dropped in the fight against Brian Suarez. He overcome that and he stopped him with a hellacious body shot to get the IBO world title. And not one of the major four sanctioning bodies, but a world title nonetheless that will give him a bargaining chip when he goes in to get one of the bigger fights. So, yeah, hats off to Lyndon Arthur. But, guys, that's pretty much all we've got time for in a stacked Let's Talk Boxing podcast. We appreciate all the views, all the listens, all the feedback. As always, check me out on Twitter at Luke_SimBoxx. Check out at SimBoxx1. Check out JTH Boxing, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to both YouTube channels. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for following. And we'll catch you on next week's episode.